Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the turkey hunting riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Do you hear that click? No, it wasn't a gun being cocked. It was the sound of all the Liberals changing the channel. Mired in the green slush fund scandal, where Trudeau appointed a chair whose business was the beneficiary of the fund, despite conflict of interest warnings, so far, $400 million have been identified as misappropriated. The fund gets $1 billion a year allocated to it from the annual budget, so that means billions more are in question. The program was immediately frozen upon confirmation of wrongdoing. That resulted in small tech startups having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that otherwise would have been deferred. So besides Canadian taxpayers being robbed, the jobs that would have come from the future Microsoft and Apple caliber companies are all being sent south. There, they'll enjoy lower taxes with a dollar that has not been devalued over insane decisions to halt natural resource development. That green slush fund wasn't the only scandal front and center before the big click. In the most recent obstruction of justice case, Justin Trudeau's government has presided over his former public safety minister, now Minister of Defense, God help us, didn't sign a warrant for electronic surveillance until after 54 days of being asked to do so. Why the unexpected delay? The unprecedented delay? Well, that leads us to another abrogation of democracy, wherein the Prime Minister refuses to hand over the documents to the China Committee investigating foreign interference by the communist government that controls China. Instead, he's aborting the regularity of the meetings, so committee members are only able to meet if the government wants them to. Why doesn't Trudeau want to produce the documents on foreign interference into our last two elections? Well, aside from the outcome benefiting his party, our intelligence agencies tried to make the Prime Minister aware of the situation as well. CSIS presented reports to his office. No one in the Prime Minister's office thought he needed to know about them, just like no one thought he should be alerted to a CSIS warrant left unsigned for 54 days. After all, the subject of the warrant was a powerful Liberal organizer and bagman. Not only chiefs of staff in his ministers' offices were friends with him, but at least one front bench minister worked closely with the person under investigation. Who knows how many people in his inner circle may be recorded in a wiretapping operation? 54 days, over 2 months. Is that how long it takes to erase emails, text messages, and WhatsApp conversations? We'll never know. Inserting himself into a federal investigation, the Prime Minister tried photobombing everyone's Thanksgiving with the RCMP commissioner as his legitimizing prop. Canadians got the message all right. The RCMP has his back. Trudeau tried to send the message that he does care about foreign interference. Yep, black-faced Prime Minister pronouncing he had the leader of the country he played Mr. Dress-Up in that he wanted to cooperate in a criminal investigation. This is the same Prime Minister who was accusing the opposition parties of interfering in a police investigation he refuses to provide the documents for. The same Prime Minister who obstructed the investigation into his obstruction of justice in firing the Attorney General, who would not interfere in the SNC, now Atkins-Realis, corruption case. The same left-wing extremist MP who is pushing his private member's bill to give Justin Trudeau The power to slaughter all livestock to give the illusion he's taking action on a future public health risk is trying to shut down the special committee of MPs tasked to deal with China's aggression. I mentioned that earlier. He put the motion forward the day Trudeau's COVID public safety minister testified he would never designate a political staffer to deal with a CSIS warrant, let alone someone who had a relationship with the individual being targeted for electronic surveillance. In this case, the warrant pertained to the People's Republic of China. The post-COVID public safety minister claims he never saw the vital warrant until his chief of staff brought it to his attention sometime within the 54 days of CSIS delivering it, and the warrant actually being signed by the new Minister of Public Safety. The new minister's chief of staff, a remnant of the defeated Ontario Liberal government for which the target had been an elected member, wanted to know the names of the people whose communications were anticipated to be intercepted in the execution of the warrant prior to the warrant being authorized. Why would that matter to her? Nearly 2 months passed before the minister finally issued the warrant. The federal minister who delayed the warrant also happened to be the previous city police chief who dogged the brother of former Ontario Liberal Premier's arch rival. In other words, the federal Liberal minister who claims he signed the time-sensitive, the sensitive warrant became aware of, up to 54 days prior, was also connected to the provincial government the CSIS suspect had been a representative of. The push to end the Special China Committee happened the same days as the revelation about the warrant pertaining to foreign interference by the PRC. The China Committee is the same body that ordered the production of documents about the transfer of viruses from the Level 4 Winnipeg lab to Wuhan, China, that Trudeau refused to provide Parliament with. Is Trudeau afraid the Special Committee on China will order the production of documents pertaining to foreign interference in the 2019 election? Trudeau claims he never knew about the PRC campaigning against Conservative candidates in the 2019 federal election. Purportedly, that's why he did not have the targets of the PRC's actions against them notified. Justin Trudeau is afraid evidence exists that proves he knew about opposition candidates being threatened by the PRC, but did nothing. A prime minister is supposed to protect the security of all Canadians, not just the ones who support his government. After all, a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. Regular viewers of this show may know that I can be very critical of the bought and paid for legacy media. I have some pretty good news for any legacy media journalists watching today, but are not talking about the bought and paid media, at least not without including independent media too. Recently, I read an article about a poll showing 50% of Canadians now opposing Trudeau's Soviet-style electric vehicle mandate. At no point in the article did they explain how the mandate works. A member of the media might complain that's a story about a poll, not the policy, and that might be a fair point. But there's this one problem. When the government held their policy announcement, the media reported that the government had announced the policy, but they never explained how the policy actually works. The CBC did 2 follow-up stories in the week after the policy announcement. The title of one of the articles on CBC right now is, quote, "Your questions about Canada's plan to embrace electric vehicles answered," end quote. CBC claims these are the common questions they may hear. What about emergency vehicles, farm equipment, or my snowblower? Can Canada's electrical grid support the change? Is a large-scale switch to electric vehicles any better for the environment? What about rural Canadians who travel long distances or don't have access to charging stations? Those are good questions. I hear those questions too. But the questions I always hear first when I tell someone the government is bringing in an electric vehicles sales mandate is, how does that work? Many Canadians are familiar with how supply management works, but few democracies have much experience with demand management. Despite the Liberals' best efforts, this is still a free country, the government can't make you buy a car, both for constitutional and practical reasons. And if they can't make you buy a car, they can't make you buy a specific car. The government tried to give people incentives to buy electric vehicles. All that happened was that wealthy people who wanted to buy luxury EVs received a rebate funded by the taxpayers who can't afford a car because they pay so many taxes. Providing incentives wasn't enough. The prices of electric vehicles were too high compared to internal combustion engines. The subsidies would have to grow by tens of thousands of dollars to get people to change their behavior. Eventually, the socialists run out of other people's money. They tried the carrot. Now the government is reaching for the stick. The government is going to fine car dealers if they do not meet the government target for EV sales. The problem for car dealers is the same one the government had. They can't make you buy anything. All the car dealers can do is make it so that you don't want to buy an internal combustion vehicle. And the only real way they can do that is to increase the prices on normal vehicles by a lot, by more than what anyone now pays for a normal car. This will make owning a car unaffordable for millions of Canadians. That'll reduce demand overall. That way, a dealer can still only sell the same number of EVs, but it makes up a larger percentage of their sales. But the car dealerships still get to keep all that markup on the combustion engine vehicles. Trudeau's Soviet-style electric vehicle mandate will not increase the number of EVs on the road. It'll decrease the number of cars in total. The socialists want to make it progressively harder every year to own any kind of personal vehicle. The Prime Minister was serving up some leftovers last week. He reposted a video he did over the summer. It's the video that makes him sound like a petty dictator. And he reposted it. Because when Liberals watch the video, they don't hear it. They don't hear because they're out of touch. Young Canadians keep telling pollsters they want to own a single-family home and start a family. That's what Canadians are saying. So Trudeau puts out a video and says the government's going to solve the housing shortage by letting well-connected Liberals lease property from the government, build dense housing, then turn around and rent it to you. In August, the Liberals announced the first lands were open for bids from developers. The government has some conditions for the bidders. First, the building has to be 25% more energy efficient than the current highest standard. That'll add to the price and drive up the rent. Next, the developer must ensure 30% of the units are available to rent below cost. But since the developer doesn't want to go bankrupt, they'll have to make up the difference by charging higher rents to the other 70%. The final condition is that the developer only build dense housing. Not a single family home will be allowed on the site. That's because the Liberal base hates the sight of them. The Liberal base is almost entirely urban now and wealthy. And that's a toxic combination. They look down on people who live in the suburbs. If you walk around the wealthy neighborhoods of Ottawa, Toronto, or Montreal, you'll see a unique home after unique home. The suburbs are filled with standardized housing. That's because it's cheaper for developers. That makes it more affordable for young people to buy a home. The socialists sipping champagne in the cities don't care about affordability. They resent the suburbs and see a single-family home as a crime against climate. The Liberals can't be seen supporting single-family homes and all they represent. So they don't build them, even though that's what young Canadians are asking for. The Liberals just don't listen to anyone but their ever-shrinking, wealthy urban base. The rest of us can just own nothing and be happy.